No, please.
When it comes to all the parts of JoJo's bizarre adventure, Jojolion is definitely one of them. I feel like it is the coldest take of all time to say that it is the weirdest part of JoJo, bar none. And while normally I fuck with the weird shit JoJo tends to do, Jojolion definitely emphasizes the bizarre more than the JoJo or the adventure. Like, listen to a list of the shit that happens in this part. A girl finds a man who is completely naked save for a little sailor boy hat buried alive near her house. Said girl immediately hits bro with the nice cock, then proceeds to talk about his weird balls. This is a major plot point. Gappy hits the greatest stanky leg of all time. There is a baby who just shows up in the middle of the ocean for no reason. The main JoJo can't read. Joshu is introduced talking about how Chris Benoit is his favorite wrestler. This guy was one of the most difficult fights in the part, and all he did the entire time was pipe women and play with Legos. Two bugs fight each other and it is the best fight in the part. Multiple other bugs fight as well, but they're made of rocks and they're the worst fights in the part. Josuke wins a golden Lamborghini in a bet, then proceeds to hide it in a tree for 3 days to avoid the police. And then, of course, this guy's there. Like, holy shit. No wonder there were so many rock insects in this part. Araki was bugging. As much as I do meme on Jojolion, some of what Araki was cooking definitely succeeded. Like, I thought Yasuo was great. I really liked how she was the only consistent Jobro throughout the part, and that instead of just having a group of bozos follow Gappy around, we had a sort of revolving door of characters like Joshu, Narisuke, Tsurugi, Mitsuba, and Mamazuku just sort of rotate in and out based on whether they'd make sense in the arc. And for pacing, I really love that. And as dirty as the part tends to do them at times, I think characters like Narisuke, Kato, and Jobin are some of the most well-written and best the series has. Plus, from the angle of teaching JoJo fans what good music sounds like, Araki was pretty much in his bag this part. Shit was basically just Elvis and Prince beating the shit out of each other the whole time, with like Nat King Cole there as special guest ref. Also Snoop's there, so shout out Snoop. Love you. However, the rest of the part just didn't stack up to me. Whatever JoJo gumbo Araki was labbing out came out mad overcooked. Ironically enough, given Gappy's whole thing, Jojolion feels like 1.5 parts of JoJo just sort of smushed together. But while Gappy's equivalent exchange left him with a gap tooth, a rock eye patch, and the most broken stand in the series, it left Jojolion as a whole a lot more of a fucked up, bloated amalgamation. Josuke went through 1.5 character arcs, the part was twice as long as it should have been, and there are 2.5 antagonists. Honestly, that last one in specific is sort of a microcosm of why I don't fuck with Jojolion. Like, people tend to consider Toru the main villain of Jojolion, and despite the fact that I spent a lot of time in my last video shitting on his arc, I actually really like him as a character. His relationship with Yasuo is fun, and the scene where Jobin's heart explodes while he jujus on that beat a mile away is fucking hilarious. As the main villain of Jojolion though, nah, I just don't see it. He showed up out of nowhere in chapter 81 out of 110 and immediately jumped into the, ooh, look at me, I'm the villain now, And everyone just sort of goes with it. The entire rest of the story is spent getting me hyped for conflicts between other people. So him just showing up and shitting on everyone for the last 30 chapters of the manga really kind of fucks with my investment in the story. It gives him a bad case of Disney twist villain syndrome, which honestly really sucks because I fucked with his personality. If he had been built up like somebody like Jobin, I think he would have been really great. Speaking of Jobin, he was pushed. Jobin shows up about a quarter of the way into Jojolion and is insta-sus. And after Damo gets vibe checked, sort of slots into that role of main antagonist for a bit. And it's a role he's really good at. His motive to break the family curse and save Tsurugi is great. He's got that weird one-sentence philosophy JoJo villains tend to have. Live a quiet life, take the first napkin, every day is summer vacation. It fits that sort of vibe. And he manages all of this with a good level of menace and planning that makes him a cool, believable, interesting villain. He is high-key the most fun part of the second half of Jojolion to me. Seeing his build-up from starting as a mole for Damo, to Dolomiti, to burning the orchard, to killing Ojiro, to finally cementing his status as the villain by killing his own father, that shit is fucking Kino. And seeing that sort of rise into villainy is a sort of character arc we haven't seen in JoJo yet. I'm really excited to see where his arc ends. Oh my god. They Sopranos'd my boy! He didn't even get a fight! Mitsuba's like, no, don't fight him, the head doctor's penis is too big! And Jobin's like, what? Sorry, baby girl, I had my AirPods in, I didn't hear you. And then he just fucking spontaneously combusts. It's unceremonious. I understand the narrative weight of his death, but the way it was handled, after all the development he was given, it left a bad taste in my mouth. Honestly though, I don't consider Jobin or Toru to be the main villains of Jojolion. Toru ends up as more of a final boss minor villain, and Jobin's arc is a lot more Walter White than Yoshikage Kira. But Damo is 100% grade A JoJo motherfucking villain. He's the leader of the group of minor villains we've been following at this point in the story, including Jobin. He's a threat, like, to the point where he has that main villain moment where he takes out the whole cast, and he is the villain to Josuke's story. Gappy's goal is to find out who he is, and how the fuck he ended up in the ground with no clothes, 4 balls, and a little sailor boy hat. Damo is the resolution to that goal. And he's a dick, so Josuke can just smack cam him and finish his character arc. And he does, and is great. Only problem is that this happens exactly halfway through Jojolion. And we have another 55 fucking chapters to get through, oh my god. When I say I don't fuck with Jojolion because it's a bloated mess, this is what I mean. It feels like a TV show that was meant to wrap up after one season, but was so successful that the network forced them to keep going, even though they had no plans. We spent each arc of the first half of Jojolion getting to know each of the Higashikatas, but if you put a gun to my head and asked me what Daya Higashikata's whole deal was, before the reread I did for this video, I would have been prepared to meet Biggie. They show up that little in the story despite being advertised as primary characters. It shows up heavy in the villains too, like, quick, we defeated the highly threatening drug cartel that actively caused our plot. Who do we have our JoJo fight now? Fucking, I don't know, doctors. I think of everything in the part though, the most fucked up example of this by far is Josuke's arc itself. Part 8 begins with Josuke in the ground with no memories, and his arc is him discovering himself, finding out who he is. And through meeting the Higashikatas and Yasuo and fighting the Damo group, he figures this out. He's Yoshikage Kira and Josefumi Kujo, but he's also himself, Josuke Higashikata. And that's like a beautiful ending to his story. He found his identity and created a new one for who he is now. But because his story wraps up so perfectly halfway through the part, he spends the second half of the part twiddling his balls with his thumb up his ass. Bro becomes such a passive character, his final attack is him sitting in a hospital and doing nothing. Araki likes to pretend his motivation shifted to saving Holly, but that's cap and I will hear no debate about it. In the final chapter, Yasuo turns to Josuke and is like, gee, I'm so sorry we can't heal Holly because the last Rokakaka's gone. And Josuke literally doesn't care. He does the equivalent of L Packwatch rip to Kira's mom, but I'm different. It's absolutely insane. And after everything I just slogged through, having that be the conclusion completely took me out. Low-key, it hits Riverdale vibes. They're both set in a small town with some spooky mystery shit afoot, but they both end up bloated messes, mainly because of how they vomit ideas onto a wall like a drunk white woman. And it's anyone's guess which of these ideas are gonna show up or disappear at any point. For example, season 3 of Riverdale ends with a flash forward that shows Archie, Betty, and Veronica by a fire in their underwear covered in blood. And low-key, it looks like they ate Jughead. It's wild, it's a crazy cliffhanger. But the show then proceeds to spend most of season 4 building back up to this moment, showing the main characters going to jail and shit, showing Jughead in a morgue, only to have the characters do the big reveal that Jughead is alive. And it's just that some spooky cult boy hit him in the head with a rock. What the fuck? This is a show with 30 serial killers in it, and you're telling me that this guy is what has these 3 so pressed? Are you serious? It's such a whack way to end a story that makes me feel like a moron for getting me invested at all. It's okay though. Jojolion would never do something this egregiously corny though, right? Right? Chapter 83 of Jojolion ends with a flash forward that shows the Higashikatas being their normal goof-ass selves, while upstairs Tsurugi zips his granddad Norisuke up into a body bag. They just do everything except straight up showing Tsurugi kill him. It's a crazy cliffhanger that left me absolutely shook when I first read it. I needed to know where that shit went, you know? So the next couple arcs proceed and start to build back up to that moment, showing Tsurugi breaking children's knees and drowning them in shit, only to reveal that it was actually Jobin who shot Norisuke, and that he did it in front of his whole family, and they were crying and shitting themselves. Which is wild, don't get me wrong, but it's also just straight up not what was in the flash forward, so I feel like an absolute bozo for reading, especially week to week. But do you see my point? It's wild how such differently acclaimed and differently viewed shows, they do the exact same shit wrong, and it's honestly kind of whack to watch. Would I consider Jojolion better than Riverdale? Objectively, yes. Personally, also yes, but it's close. I feel like Riverdale's weirdo shit is so goofy that it's just fun to get smacked and watch with some friends, but Jojolion had a lot more potential to be something unironically great. So seeing it waste that potential makes it way harder for me to get through and like as much as I want to. Because at the end of the day, I want to like it. It's still JoJo, it's still something I love. But Jojolion just ain't it. TLDR though, the real reason I hate this part is that there are no lions. What the fuck?
Man, I can never be dry. Hit me up, I got the merchandise. Gas so cold, they call me merchant ice. Blood not warm, I merge with ice. Looking at me like I'm marked.